Hi there, my name is John Thompson. I want to thank you for checking out our conversation today that we call What is Enough? And it's a conversation about money that could change your life. So we're going to start with some statistics that you might find kind of interesting, and these numbers obviously change all the time, but this will give you a sense of where things are currently. So US consumer debt is about $15 trillion, which works out to about $41,000 per person, including kids across the US. 36% of that debt is consumer debt, not mortgage debt, which tends to be tax preferred. About 1.8 people in 160 file bankruptcy, and that's actually down 30%. So numbers typically are much higher than that. So how do we learn? And how do we ultimately discover anything new and maybe make a decision to understand that and then make maybe changes in life that's important? So this is the way we all learn something. So we become aware of something in our world, and hopefully this is what this conversation is going to do for you. So we become aware of it, and then if we really study it and understand it and take it to heart, we're going to maybe ultimately take action. So I'm going to make you aware of some interesting things today. I hope you're going to understand it when we're done, and then maybe you'll be encouraged to take some kind of action. When we talk about change, all change is really personal. This conversation we're going to have in the next 15 or 18 minutes is not about budgeting, it's not about retiring, it's about cash flow and cash flow awareness. We might talk a little bit about your money blueprint, and then there's some tools which I'm going to share with you that could help you with your money awareness. So just to start off, let's kind of think through these questions. I'm going to ask you a series of questions and just kind of think yes or no for yourself. Do you have enough money? Are you spending enough time with your family and friends? Do you come home from your job full of life? Do you have time to participate in things you believe are worthwhile? Yes or no? If you were laid off from your job, would you see it as an opportunity? Right? So if you're laid off from your job, would you see that as an opportunity? Are you satisfied with the contribution you've made to the world or are making today? Are you at peace with your money? Does your job reflect your values? Yes or no? Do you have a savings to see you through 6 months of normal living expenses? Could you get through a period where you were not having any income and get through maybe 6 months with all your expenses paid? Does your life hold? Do all the pieces, your job, your expenditures, your relationships, all the values fit together? If you answered no to even one of those questions, I think that this conversation can be really interesting to you. I'm going to go through some sort of financial goals just very quickly. And these might apply, maybe all these apply, maybe one of those might apply, who knows. But reduce stress around money. Is this a goal? Do you want to have more clarity around your money? Do you want to feel more in control and empowered about money? Get out of debt faster than you thought was possible? Live within your means and develop savings, and get to the point where you can choose the type of work you do, whether you get paid or not. Connect with greater meaning and purpose in your life. And would you like to have more time for activities and people that are important to you? Those may not all seem like financial goals, but they're all related around money and the way that you earn money and so forth. It impacts your ability to do many of those different things on that list. So let's talk a little bit about financial integrity. So what is integrity? Integrity, the definition, is the state or quality of being entire or complete. Wholeness, entireness, unbroken. Moral soundness, honesty, freedom from corrupting influence, or motive. So that's integrity. How is our society being impacted by affluenza? So you probably have not heard of affluenza, but it's a real disease and it's all around you, and maybe you even have it. So affluenza is also known as kind of the American dream, right? Many of us want this dream. Fast cars, big houses, ability to party on a yacht, all those kind of things, right? That's part of the American dream and what we've been driving for. So what is affluenza and how is it related to that? So affluenza we define as an epidemic of stress, overwork, shopping, and debt caused by the dogged pursuit of the American dream. It's the bloated, sluggish, and unfulfilled feeling that results from one's efforts to keep up with the Joneses. And it's an unsustainable addiction to economic growth. So what are some of the symptoms of this disease we see around us called affluenza? It could be spending more than you earn. Maybe there's unpaid bills around. Investment concerns or worries, workaholism, minimal time for family. And maybe there's no time for service, right? So this applies to a lot of people around us, and maybe it applies to you. So as more about it, we ask this question. The amount of time that an average American spends behind the wheel has been 9 hours a week, and maybe that's different now as we've gone through a major pandemic. But There's still a lot of time driving and doing other kind of things, right? And the increase in average TV viewing since the 1960s has gone up by 40%. And we could obviously include streaming shows and all sorts of other things into that category now. And then the decrease in average time that parents spend with their kids has gone down. I mean, there's been a huge decrease in time we actually spend with most people most important around us. Now let's look at the real estate around us in our homes. Let's look at the increase of the size of homes over here. So from 1949, 1,100 square feet to most recently almost 2,800 square feet. So houses have 2.5 times, almost tripled during that time period. To what end? Are our families bigger? In many cases, they're smaller. So what's a lot of space going to? Americans with 2+ homes, over 8 million people have 2 homes. And then Americans that are homeless, 580,000, and that number is growing every day, as we all know. Let's talk about the more is better loop. So it's the psychological cul-de-sac that Paul Wachtell calls the catch-22 of the American dream. The belief that more is better, therefore what I have is not enough, right? So you go around and around on this more is better loop. So even when you get the more that you believe would make life better or make you happy, you're still operating out of this same belief that more is always better. So let's go get more. So more can therefore never be enough. So is this normal these days? Getting dressed in clothes you buy for work, driving through traffic in a car that you're still paying for in order to get to the job you need so you can pay for the clothes, the car, and the house you leave empty all day long in order to afford to live in it. And that may change a little bit in terms of how people are working from home and those kind of things. Nonetheless, that's the idea, and that's what many people want to go back to and refer to as normal. It's kind of a fun cartoon, Calvin and Hobbes. Getting is better than having. When you get something, it's new and exciting. When you have something, you take it for granted and it's kind of boring. But everything you get turns into something you have. That's why you always need to get new things. I feel like I'm in some stockholder's dream. Waste and want, that's my motto. Overconsumption leads to a declining quality of life and enslaves many of us to tedious and morally questionable jobs. It leaves little time for relationships, and overconsumption leads to lower quality relationships. So we asked the question, how much do you have saved? So 58% of US citizens have less than $1,000 in liquid savings. So where do you fall kind of on this pie chart? Just kind of think about that. And again, that goes back to that same question about, do you have enough in reserves to get through several months if something were to happen? And did you know that it would take 4 Earths for everyone on the planet to live the lifestyle of the average US citizen? 4 Earths, that's obviously not sustainable. The right to consume has become the centerpiece of the American dream. More is better, success is excess. But really, you're not alone. It's a big world. We're all interconnected in many different ways. And so understanding this concept may actually bring us all a little bit closer together. So there's a wonderful book that much of this conversation is based on. It's called Your Money or Your Life, and it was written a couple of decades ago, and it's by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez. You can certainly Google and look it up. It's a wonderful book, and it really talks about the trade-off between your money or your life. So let's talk about what is money universally. Money ultimately is something we trade our time for, right? Go to a job, you get paid, you're trading your time to get that money. You pay for money with your time, and then you choose how to spend your money. So what is time? Time is our life energy. It's precious because it's limited. The choice about how we use our time are really our legacy here on Earth. And so ultimately, you determine what money is worth to you because it's your time, it's your life energy. So here's 2 questions that maybe can change your life. Does this expenditure bring me satisfaction and fulfillment in proportion to the hours of life energy you're going to spend on it? Is this thing I'm buying going to bring me satisfaction, and will it make me feel fulfilled in proportion to the number of hours I've spent to buy it? Is this expenditure of life energy in alignment with my values and life purpose, with what I really want in my life? So those are 2 really powerful questions. If you just sit back and reflect on those questions once in a while, it'll be really important. I'm going to go kind of walk you through an example here of your money, your life. So let's say you want to go buy a 60-inch high-def 4K TV, and these days, the prices keep going down, but it's around $1,500 bucks, let's call it. And so let's say you make $38 an hour, which is about $80,000 on an annual basis. So of that $38, you pay taxes on it, right? So that's about $1,350 of the money out of your $38 that goes to the government, right? Which leaves over $2,450 that you're earning. So let's kind of add this up here. So we got $1,500 divided by 2450 equals 61 hours of labor to get that TV, which may be perfectly fine to you. It could be something you really want. You've been working hard for it, and that's fine. But just being aware of it is now what we're really talking about. So it's 2 weeks of your life not learning, helping, hiking, being with your family and your friends. And if, of course, you buy it on credit and pay for it over time, maybe it's now up to 75 hours of your time. Interesting concept, right? So what is enough? We're going to talk about the thing called the fulfillment curve. So the fulfillment curve is simply an example of how we spend money over time to gain fulfillment. So when we were little babies, it really didn't take a lot to make us happy, right? We had everything we needed with our parents, and there was very little that we needed, but we did know that fulfillment comes from outside of us. As we got a little bit older, we started filling some of those needs for ourselves. We learned to use money. Maybe we got an allowance and we went and bought our first cool video game or a skateboard or a doll or whatever it might have been for you. So now we sort of said, oh, I saved my money and now I got something I liked and it was enjoyable. So now it fulfilled me. So now I've learned that money equals fulfillment. But what do we really need in a day? All we really need is survival, food, water, shelter for most people. Anything above that is really kind of considered more types of things, or comforts. So we then go from buying necessity to comforts. So more money equals more fulfillment. It's further reinforced. The more stuff we buy, the more cool stuff we buy, each one of those purchases feels good. We're spending more and more money. And eventually we spend beyond comforts to outright luxuries, and we hardly even notice the change because now it's becoming ingrained in our habits. We now firmly believe that money equals fulfillment. Now we're up to a bunch of luxuries and things that may or may not be all important to us. We barely notice it's taking more and more money for smaller and smaller amounts of fulfillment. That very first video game that you bought with your own money and your allowance money and your Christmas money was really, really important, right? It was a wonderful thing. And now you've had 10 or 15 things like that, and there's a diminishing return on the fulfillment of all those different things. So one day we hit a fulfillment curve, a fulfillment ceiling, and it looks like the more is better. Like more is not better after all, but we're kind of trapped, right? The formula, money equals fulfillment, is starting to work against us because now we got a lot of stuff. We got a lot of luxuries. We got to deal with it, right? So we got to acquire it, learn it, operate it, store it, throw things away, dispose of them, put it in storage units, fix it, make payments on it, protect it, feel kind of guilty about it sometimes. Maybe we have to upgrade it. We got to sell it. We got to deal with it all, right? Spending that money doesn't bring us the same fulfillment it once did. In many cases, it just brings us a sense of burden or futility. And we know this in our lives. And then what happens? So why does money equal fulfillment not really work as much anymore? Well, it's because that law of diminishing returns, which I just mentioned, is built into nature. And the first time we do anything is far better than the 100th time we do something. We all know that. There's a peak on our fulfillment curve that we call enough. If you can identify that for yourself, that's really important because we know it's not always easy to recognize what is enough. So here's another quick example of money awareness. Not a lot of people buy magazines anymore, but maybe you have subscriptions and different things, but maybe there are some magazines in your life, and maybe you have a bunch of those kind of things. So, and maybe it costs you $180 a year for those kind of different things, which again is how many work hours for you might that be, right? You got to buy the stuff, right? You spend our money several times over. You got to buy it first, and that's once in the time work to buy the stuff. Then you got to read it, and the time spent reading those kind of things, and you got to store it and dispose of it. All those different things cost time, which ultimately cost money. So going back to this financial integrity kind of thing, I want to remind you that all change is personal. It's not about budgeting. It's not about retiring. This is really about cash and cash flow awareness. And I don't want you to think this is a bummer. And the reality is that just becoming aware of these things is very powerful for many people, and it was for me as well. So we're going to go through some kind of tools here that you can certainly reach out to us and get. We're happy to share it and learn from that. Right, so we want to start with where we are right now. So in order to move forward in a new way, it's important to figure out where you are and how you got there. So the first thing you always advise everyone to do is to review your lifetime income, right? And again, it's not about judgment, it's simply about awareness, right? You've been working maybe for a few years or many, many years, and ultimately you want to figure out how much you've all made over time. So knowing you've made money in the past and you can continue to do so in the future, and that's what it's all about. And then ultimately, what do you have to show for it? You notice we're kind of showing a little Excel spreadsheet. Reach out to us. We're happy to give you copies of it to work on yourself, or you can create your own little spreadsheet as well. Again, not about judgment. It's simply about awareness. Knowing you've kept some money in the past. So if you have some savings, you have some money saved up, retirement, other savings accounts, and so forth, You know that you've kept some of that money you've earned over your lifetime in the past, and you can continue to do so, and maybe you can build on it. So now we want to say, okay, so this is our lifetime savings. We want to see and accept the current reality. Think back over the choices you've made over those years of working. And a reminder that forgiveness, forgiving yourself, is giving up all hope of a better past. You cannot change the past. You can only go forward from here. So understand that you have control of your response to your future. It's your response. So one of the ways we kind of help you think through this is what we call the consumption curve. You write down the 10 items you purchased, starting with the most expensive: house, cars, college, all those kind of different things. Then you check the box that seems the most appropriate. Which one is it? Is it survival? Was it comfort? Was it luxury? Or at the end of the day, was it just clutter? Right? So here's kind of a quick little form you can get, write things down: survival, comfort, luxury, or clutter. Now let's move into tracking your life energy. And all we're really talking about is this is your work hours and times related to work. So in this example, you have job time of 40 hours a week for most people. Maybe you have to drive to your work a half hour a day, and that's commuting. Costuming is getting dressed and so forth for that job, so you can be presentable to people. Your meals you're taking during the day, burn out in the end of the day, you got to decompress. Escape entertainment, and then down at the bottom could be servants, because you're not in your home doing certain things, and maybe you have to pay for someone to actually do those things. So when we add up all those things that are related to the work we do, maybe it's 60 hours in the end. So here's another example of income. So let's just say your income is $90,000 a year, and you take 2 weeks off, so you work 50 weeks, that's $1,800 a week. 60 hours related, work-related energy spent, which really works at about $30 an hour. So that's what you're trading your life energy for. So a pretty simple way of thinking about it, and a way to evaluate the things you're going to start to consider whether or not you're going to buy. So again, it's not about judgment, it's simply about awareness, and knowing what you actually make per hour can have a huge impact on your actual spending, right? So we're going to encourage you, write down what you think you're actually making. What is the value of 1 hour of your life? Money can't buy happiness, but if I have a big house, a fancy car, and a giant TV, I wouldn't mind being unhappy. All right, so the next step in all this, right? We've figured out how much money we've made over our life. We've figured out how much money we've kept over our working life. We've analyzed where some of that money's gone, decided what our hourly wage is, and now we're going to talk about tracking cash flow. And this is really the key to this entire thing. So tracking every cent you spend is a key to financial integrity and awareness and an understanding of all this. And this precedes action. You got to kind of just, again, step back, think about where you're at, track your cash flow, and before you take any sort of forward motion from here. And there is no 99% commitment. If you really commit to this process and learning and becoming aware, I want you to, over the next couple of weeks, kind of track where and how you spend your money. How do you trade your life energy? Where is it going? So a lot of different ways you could do that. You can have a simple spreadsheet. There's lots of little online tools. I found over time that just a simple little mini notebook. You just write stuff every time you spend some money, cash, debit card, credit card, whatever. Just write it in a little journal, and then you'll have it. So track it for a month if you can. Categorize all the spending into simple categories like just food, shelter, utilities, clothing, health, recreation, transportation. So a completely different class that we go through, and we talk about the 4 steps of financial freedom, and this is all based in, and this is how you're going to get to these 4 steps of financial freedom. The first step is cash, and you want to have that cash. That's 6 months reserve. That's for emergencies, car problems, lifestyle surprises. The next step, step number 2 in these 4 steps, is to get rid of all your consumer debt. Credit cards, student loans, installment debt, everything other than a mortgage. Then you want to start building massive liquidity as much as you can, right? So now you're investing, looking for opportunities, you're getting money aside to avoid job losses, or if there's some kind of health issue in your family, opportunities to invest and maybe open new businesses and do other fun stuff like that. Maybe you're saving for college and retirement. So that's where you're building up massive liquidity. Then you get to the freedom point. And the freedom point I'm going to show you in a moment. But at the freedom point, once you've reached that one, now you have a choice, right? Do you pay off your mortgage or not? In many cases, it doesn't financially make sense to pay off a mortgage, but sometimes it does. Maybe you're funding your life dreams. Maybe your dream is to travel. Maybe your dream is to go and help people overseas. Maybe it's to do some volunteer work at a hospital. Maybe it's to have a vacation home someplace. Maybe it's to do charity work. So that's where you do those things, is once you've hit your freedom point. So financial independence is simply the point where your income from what you save exceeds the money you spend. Right? So if we simply look at this, we got this little blue line here. Blue line here that's slowly going up, right? Your income hopefully is going up. You have the money that you're spending is going down over time because you're now more aware of it. And so here's this line over here. This is the money you're saving. And when these two lines cross, that ultimately is where your freedom point is, where the money you have generates enough income that you no longer have to work for money. Maybe you continue to work, but maybe you don't have to work for money. Just a reminder, you're not alone. This is a very common situation across the entire world. And so I don't want you to forget that. We're always here to help support you as well. So what is the personal financial roadmap? Learn how to manage cash through cash flow awareness and fulfillment. Then ultimately learn how to borrow smart and repay smart. And finally, learn how to save wisely. So again, I mentioned when we started that, I don't think I mentioned actually, so we're in the mortgage business here. We love this financial type of stuff. And one of the ways that many people can find cash flow within their existing budget is by looking at their mortgage. So mortgage and other debts is the easy way to kind of start. We're happy to help do that. Get us your information. We're going to show you if there's cash flow to be had, and then you have to make a decision and take action if you decide if you want that cash flow to start improving your life. We always tell everyone that this is all simple concepts, but not easy, just like the choice between the apple and the donut. Thanks very much.